This is Joseph Drust, and welcome back to another episode of Ask ZBrush. So we had a question sent in asking, how can I move and pose more than one subtool without merging the subtools? So to start off, I just have ZBrush loaded up, and I have the earthquake model here loaded in. An earthquake consists of multiple subtools here. So the question is asking about moving multiple subtools or even posing a model like earthquake here without merging all your tools together. So how can you go by doing this inside of ZBrush? So the answer to this is to use Transpose Master. So if I navigate up to the Z plugin tab up here and then go to the bottom, there is a plugin called Transpose Master. Now Transpose Master is going to allow you to take a multiple subtool mesh and create a T-pose mesh that you can then pose. And then after the posing is done, you can transfer that pose back to your original model. So I'm just going to dock this over to the side here. So I'm just going to click this button at the top. So now it's over here. And with earthquake selected, I'm first just going to come over here and click this T-pose mesh button. So it's going to take all those subtools that earthquake consists of. It's going to generate a version with all of them set to the lowest subdivision. And now I'm going to get a new tool created that is all those subtools merged together. So if I turn on my polyframes here, you can see that earthquake is now one single subtool, and the different areas on earthquake are broken up into separate polygroups. So you can see the wrapping and his clothing, his body, his eyes. Pretty much all those subtools have a different polygroup assigned. So now that I have this version of earthquake, I can simply come in and manipulate this to generate a new pose. So I'm going to hold down Control to select my mask brush. I'm going to navigate over here, and I'm going to select the mask lasso brush. And in here, I'm going to come through, I'm just going to bend this arm over here. So I'm just going to mask out his lower part of his arm. Then I'm going to hold Control to flip that. I'm going to select the rotate transpose line, draw that out, and click the inner circle there to bend his arm. And then I'm going to unmask everything. And now I'm going to hide his clothing. So I'm just going to hold Control and Shift to isolate the clothing, and then Control and Shift and click again to hide it. And now I'm going to mask out his arm here. So using that mask lasso, just make sure I get all those vertices on his arm. I got some through here. Just make sure I get all those. And now I'm going to invert that mask by holding Control and clicking off. Do that same process again. So getting the rotate transpose line, rotating his arm like so. So just moving it back. And then we go back to draw, clear my mask. And for this posing process, you can use any of the tools inside of ZBrush. So I'm going to switch to the move brush, and I'm going to move some of these points that may cause a little bit of mesh pinching through here. So just relaxing this area through here, so I don't have all that mesh pinching on my model from this pose. So just using move and relaxing this area, getting rid of some of those pinched zones. So that looks pretty good. And now I'm just going to bring back the rest of his clothing. So holding Control and Shift and clicking. And now I have a version of earthquake like this. So you can come through and pose earthquake like so and do any movement on any of the subtools in your scene here. After you're happy with this, you just need to come back over to that Z plugin menu, go back to Transpose Master, and now simply click this T-pose to Subtools button. So it's going to take the pose version of earthquake here and transfer all this data back to our high-res version that consists of those multiple subtools. So I'm just going to come over here and click that. You can see it's returned back to the high-res version, and now it's going through and reposing everything. So now I have earthquake again, and you can see that his arm is now bent. This arm is now back, and the subtools that were corresponding to that movement or change in his posture there have been updated as well. So that is the process to come through and manipulate multiple subtools to perform move and posing. You just need to come through the Transpose Master and generate that process. Now, one bonus feature with Transpose Master, you also have the ability to save these poses, then you can load them back onto a model at any time. So I'm just going to reload earthquake here. So I'm going to hit Comm on my keyboard, and I'm just going to go to Lightbox. I'm just going to reload earthquake. So now he's back to his default pose. And now I'm simply going to do that same process. I'm going to generate that transpose mesh. I'm going to come over to the transpose master, click that. This is going to generate that new tool. So now with this new tool selected, I can generate multiple poses and then save these poses out as files. So this is his default pose. So I'm just going to save this out as his default. So to save a pose, you just need to come over to Transpose Master here, and we just need to re-click this T-pose mesh. So you notice if you hover over this, you get a dialog that's popping up that's saying create low-res mesh for working with transpose, but you can hold Alt for more information. So if you hold down Alt, you'll see that it says that if a T-pose mesh is selected and you press this button again, it's going to save that pose to disk. So this is going to allow us to save multiple poses for Earthquake, and then we can load them back onto his high-res model at any time. So I'm just going to click this, and it's going to bring up this little window, and it's going to allow me to save this pose now. So I'm going to click Save T-Pose Mesh. So after this window pops up, we're just going to save this. So I'm going to save this as default pose, and then just click Save. And now I'm going to pose him a little bit here. So let's say I'm going to take his vest off. So I'm going to hold Control and Shift and isolate the vest here. I'm going to mask out that top part and then flip it. And I'm going to drag with the Move Transpose line here and just move it off into space, put on the ground here. Clear that mask, bring everything back. And so now I have this version of Earthquake. So his default pose, but he doesn't have a vest. I come over to the Transpose Master plugin again and click this to save this pose now. Just clicking that, dialog's going to pop up. Click Save T-Pose Mesh. This time I'm going to save this as vest off, and then click Save. And then I'm going to undo that change to get his pose back with the vest on here. Then bring him all back. And I'm going to pose his arm again, so I'm going to use the masking tool. Mask that out, flip the mask, go to the Rotate Transpose tool there, draw it out, hold down Alt to bend that arm, like so. So now I have this pose, and I can now save this out as well. So going back to the Z plugin, clicking T-Pose Mesh, get the Save dialog, click Save T-Pose Mesh, and I'm going to save this one as arm. So now I have 3 poses saved for Earthquake here. So now if I go back to the Earthquake model and turn off my polyframes. So now that I have the high res selected, I can now go back to Transpose Master. And if you hover over the T-Pose to Subtool button here and you hold down Alt, this is going to give you the option to load a transpose. So we can now load those poses in onto the high res version that we previously saved out. So if I click this, you're going to get a Load T-Pose Mesh dialog. And now I can click Load from Disk. Now I can select a pose. So he's already in that default pose. So I'm going to select the vest off and then open that. And now it's going to process that pose onto the high-res version. And you can see now I have Earthquake with his vest off. Now let's say I want to put his vest back on. I can go back over the Transpose Master, click the T-Pose to Subtool button again, which is going to bring up that Load dialog. I can do Load File from Disk. This time I'm going to select Default Pose and click Open. It's going to reprocess that, and this time it's going to keep Earthquake on the default pose and put his vest back on. And now let's say I want to move his arm, so I'm going to go back over to Transpose Master, click T-Pose to Subtool again, and I'm going to load that last pose I saved out. Select the arm up and click Open, and that's now going to load that pose onto Earthquake. And now I have Earthquake with his arm up. So this is a pretty powerful feature to allow you to come through and store multiple poses of a model really quick, and then you can reload them at any time. So it's a very handy feature there using Transpose Master. And this process again is the alternate options for each of these buttons. So if you hold down Alt, you can see that if you have a T-Pose mesh selected, this one's going to save that pose. And if you hold down Alt over this button, if you have a Subtool mesh selected, it's going to load the pose. So there are different alternate functionalities of these two Transpose Master buttons. So if you have any other questions related to ZBrush pipelines or processes, please use the hashtag AskZBrush on Twitter. Happy ZBrushing!